Ahana, always looking out for Devansh, even invited him to move into her boarding room to help cut down on his expenses while he was away from home. Naturally, Devansh was thrilled at the idea of staying rent-free. To keep things smooth with the landlord and neighbors, they pretended to be an engaged couple, which made it easier for them to live together. As the days went by, their relationship grew more intimate behind closed doors, with no one in the boarding house suspecting what was really going on. Hello, and welcome to our channel. Today, we're diving into another chilling true story that reminds us of the shocking realities of this world. This time, our story takes us to the city of Coimbatore in Tamil Nadu, India. It's about a young man, a master at winning women's hearts, whose romantic escapades took an unexpected and tragic turn, one that ends with his own father-in-law. What really happened in this jaw-dropping tale? Stick around as we uncover all the details and piece together the events of this unbelievable case. Let's get started. Before we dive into today's story, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to our channel. Share this story with your friends. It's one you won't want to miss. Now, here's how it begins. Meet Devansh, born in 1992 in Madampadi, India. Handsome, charming, and confident, Devansh had a way with words and a knack for winning hearts. But he was also deeply narcissistic and materialistic. Switching girlfriends and jobs became a regular routine for him. After graduating high school in 2010, he moved to Coimbatore city with some friends, hoping to land a good job and start a new chapter. His first gig was as a parking attendant at a shopping mall, but most of his earnings went to parties and a carefree lifestyle. Devansh lived by the mantra, "You only live once, so enjoy while you're young." His reckless habits, however, started to alienate those around him. Even his close friend, who initially encouraged him to move, distanced himself, calling Devansh toxic and a bad influence. Fast forward to early 2016. Devansh was working part-time at a car dealership, offering vehicle loans to shoppers in malls. The job paid almost nothing, as commissions only came through if a customer's purchase was approved, an uncommon occurrence given the high cost of cars. One day, while working, Devansh met Ahana, a woman 6 years his senior. She initially approached him about a car he was selling, but her interest quickly shifted to Devansh himself. Ahana was drawn to his athletic build and confident demeanor, and she wanted to get to know him better. Ahana worked at a private bank in downtown Coimbatore. Impressed by Devansh's charisma, she suggested he switch jobs and join her company as a credit card salesperson. She explained that selling credit cards was much easier than selling cars. Intrigued, Devansh agreed and began his new role, offering credit cards to potential customers in malls and other busy locations. As they spent more time together, Ahana and Devansh's relationship grew closer. Eventually, she invited him to live with her in her boarding room to help him save money. Naturally, Devansh jumped at the opportunity. To avoid issues with the landlord or nosy neighbors, they pretended to be an engaged couple. Living with Ahana made life much easier for Devansh. With a higher income covering most of their expenses, he didn't have to stress about meeting customer quotas to pay for rent or food. Ahana was smitten with him and willingly supported him, even hinting at marriage in the future. Devansh, of course, felt right at home, enjoying the comfort and freedom Ahana provided. Their relationship became more intimate, and they carried on quietly in her boarding room, keeping their private life hidden from the world. For Devansh, it was the perfect setup, relaxed, comfortable, and carefree. For Ahana, it was the hope of building a future with the man she adored. But little did they know, this seemingly perfect arrangement would set the stage for events neither of them could have predicted. Long story short, the relationship between these two lovebirds became as intense as if they were already married. Ahana often bragged about coming from a wealthy family, mentioning that her parents owned extensive land in the Puluvapatti area. Hearing this only made Devansh more eager to claim her as his own. Eventually, they held a wedding ceremony in June 2016. Devansh was 24, and Ahana was 30. The lavish reception took place at Ahana's parents' estate, and every expense was covered by her. Devansh, who didn't have a penny to his name, happily went along for the ride without contributing a cent. After the wedding, the couple returned to Coimbatore City and resumed work once their leave ended. However, things quickly began to change. Ahona's attitude toward Devansh shifted drastically. She no longer wanted to fund his expenses and insisted that, as the head of the household, he should step up and work harder. She reminded him that earning a living was his responsibility as her husband. This was far from what Devansh had envisioned. He had married Ahona expecting to live an easy life, relying on her substantial income. Instead, he was now being asked to pay the rent, cover his own expenses, and even hand over his salary to Ahona, who would then ration money back to him for essentials like food. Unsurprisingly, Devansh was furious. The constant arguments began to pile up, and what little sweetness their marriage had quickly soured. By the end of the year, Devansh had had enough and asked for a divorce. However, Ahona refused, demanding he pay a hefty settlement along with compensation for all the money and support she had provided him during their time together. Feeling trapped and helpless, Devansh confided in a friend who had encouraged him to move to Coimbatore in the first place. At his friend's suggestion, Devansh decided to escape. He fled Coimbatore and left Ahona behind, heading to Palakkad city to stay at his friend's house. To avoid being tracked down, he changed his phone number and started a new chapter, embracing the single life once again. In Palakkad, Devansh lived modestly, relying on small amounts of money sent by his parents back in Madumpadi. However, the slower pace of life in Palakkad quickly bored him, especially compared to the bustling energy of Coimbatore. In May 2017, Devansh decided to try his luck on a dating app, where he met Vedika, a charming 25-year-old woman who worked as a customer service agent at her family's lodge in Palakkad. For Devansh, Vedika wasn't just beautiful, she was an opportunity. Still unemployed, he spun a story, claiming he worked at a private bank branch in the city, using his previous work documents as proof. The two quickly hit it off and soon met in person at a cozy cafe. Their chemistry was undeniable. Vedika, captivated by Devansh's charm, found herself falling for him. To her, Devansh seemed like the perfect man, exactly the kind of partner she had been looking for. For Devansh, Vedika represented both a fresh start and an easy target. Devansh, a master at charming women, wasn't bothered by the web of lies he was spinning. After being introduced to Vedika's family, including her father, Samarth, a well-known and influential businessman in Palakkad, Devansh effortlessly impressed them. With his prior experience in banking and credit cards, he confidently explained his work whenever they asked, skillfully dodging the fact that he was unemployed and still married to Ahona. Vedika and her family admired his knowledge and persistence, even though they were aware that his income wasn't substantial. What mattered to them was his ambition and confidence, which seemed to outweigh any concerns about his current financial situation. As their relationship grew stronger, the family approved of the union and began making plans for their wedding. One moment stood out for Devansh. Vedika told him her father had promised to make him a leader in one of their family businesses after the marriage. The position involved managing the processing of farm produce and selling vegetables, essentially acting as a collector or middleman. Devansh couldn't believe his luck. In his mind, this was his ticket to an easy life. He envisioned himself as the boss, giving orders, controlling the money, and being obeyed by employees. Excited by this prospect, Devansh called his parents in Madumpadi and fed them another lie, claiming he was divorced from his first wife and was about to remarry. He asked them to spread the word that he was single again, and his family, eager to support him, agreed without hesitation. The wedding took place in January 2018 and was far grander than his first. The reception was a lavish affair, solidifying Devansh's image as a golden boy lucky enough to marry the beautiful Vedika and join her wealthy family. The event dazzled guests, including neighbors and relatives, who were impressed by Devansh's supposed banking career. His polished look, wearing shirts and ties like an office professional, added to the aura of success he had carefully crafted. The highlight of the reception was the presence of several prominent businessmen, invited by Samarth, who warmly welcomed Devansh into their circle. Devansh basked in the admiration and respect, feeling like royalty in Palakkad. For him, this was the ultimate jackpot, a wealthy wife, a powerful family, and a promising future as the leader of a thriving business. After the wedding, Devansh quit his supposed banking job and began training under his brother-in-law to manage the family's farming business. While he looked the part, his performance told a different story. Devansh struggled to grasp even the basics, forcing his brother-in-law to closely monitor him at all times. This constant supervision frustrated Devansh, who had envisioned himself as the one in charge, handling finances, giving orders, and negotiating deals. Instead, he wasn't allowed to manage the money, make decisions, or oversee operations. Tasks like tracking deliveries, managing inventory, and handling supplies went over his head. Months passed, but there was no improvement. His in-laws quickly realized they couldn't trust Devansh to take over the business, as he failed to understand the most fundamental aspects of running it. Devansh's frustration grew. He was given only a small operational allowance by his brother-in-law and started lashing out at his wife, Vedika, accusing her of lying to him. When Vedika tried to reassure him, saying, "You'll get the hang of it, just take it slow," Devansh snapped back, "How can I learn when your brother is always breathing down my neck?" He wanted complete control of the finances and decision-making, but wasn't trusted to handle either. Instead, he was assigned menial tasks like tying up produce, delivering vegetables to the market, repairing trucks, and other labor-intensive jobs typically handled by regular employees. Devansh found this humiliating. He had pictured himself sitting in an office, delegating tasks, not doing the dirty work. Embarrassed and angry, he started skipping work altogether. Over time, Devansh distanced himself from home, hanging out with a new group of friends and frequenting cafes where he drank and partied with questionable company. Vedika tried to stop him, pleading with him to uphold her father's reputation, but Devansh shot back. "If you want me to come back and stop drinking, tell your brother to leave the shop so I can take over as the boss." This ultimatum sparked conflict between Vedika and her family. She blamed her father and brother, accusing them of turning her once hard-working husband into a lazy drunk. Her father, Samarth, didn't buy it. He pointed out Devansh's unwillingness to learn and claimed his son-in-law had no intention of taking the business seriously. How can he run a business if he doesn't understand the first thing about it? Samarth argued. He explained that Devansh had been given hands-on training in all aspects of the business so he could eventually lead it. But instead of learning, Devansh shirked responsibility and even lied about sales. Tensions reached a boiling point when Samarth confronted Devansh directly. Instead of taking the criticism, Devansh stormed out of the house, disappearing for a week without so much as a word to his wife. This is where Devansh crosses paths with a young college student named Sarasvati during one of his usual hangouts at a cafe. Sarasvati, who rents a boarding room in Palakkad city, happened to know Vedika. They were from the same area, and Vedika's family was well known in the community. But for reasons unclear, Sarasvati was taken in by Devansh's sweet-talking and his dramatic, heartbreaking stories about his life. Feeling sorry for him, she invited him to temporarily stay in her boarding room. Devansh, being the smooth talker he was, easily won Sarasvati over. She started paying for the room and covering all his living expenses, including food, while he laid low, hiding from his notoriously strict and sharp-eyed in-laws. Their relationship quickly became more than just a platonic arrangement, with the two living together in Sarasvati's room as if they were a couple. By early October 2018, however, Devansh's luck began to run out. Vedika's father, Mr. Samarth, had grown suspicious of his slippery son-in-law and decided to take matters into his own hands. He sent one of his trusted men to investigate Devansh's whereabouts and uncover the truth about his background. What the investigation revealed shocked and infuriated Mr. Samarth. It turned out that Devansh was still legally married to another woman when he married Vedika. On top of that, Devansh had been unemployed long before he ever met Vedika and had lied about his so-called banking career. Fuming, Mr. Samarth decided it was time to confront Devansh. With a small group of his employees, he began searching the city of Palakkad to track him down. A neighbor tipped them off, mentioning that Devansh was frequently seen with a girl named Sarasvati, either at cafes or her boarding room. They checked a few cafes and residences but came up empty-handed, until they arrived at a modest inn. At first, the receptionist denied that anyone matching their description was staying there. But a security guard at the inn gave them the confirmation they needed. Bursting into the room, they caught Devansh red-handed, lounging with Sarasvati. Mr. Samarth was livid. He felt lied to and deeply betrayed, but most of all, he was heartbroken for his daughter Vedika. She had been deceived and humiliated by a man who turned out to be nothing more than a lazy, manipulative liar. For Samarth, this was the final straw, and the reckoning for Devansh had officially begun. At that moment, Mr. Samarth turned to Sarasvati and ordered her to leave immediately, warning that she could face arrest if she stayed. Terrified, Sarasvati quickly grabbed her belongings and fled the scene. Devansh, meanwhile, was shoved into a car by Mr. Samarth and his employees. His head hung low in silence, his face a mask of regret. They drove to a desolate area near a riverbank, far from the bustling city. When they arrived, things took a dark turn. Devansh, realizing what was about to happen, tried to fight back but was hopelessly outnumbered. He couldn't do much to defend himself, and soon, his life came to a violent end. His lifeless body was discarded by the riverbank, left to be discovered by the elements. 3 days later, a passerby caught a whiff of a strong, foul odor while walking near the river. Upon investigating, they stumbled upon Devansh's body and immediately notified the police. At first, investigators assumed it was a robbery gone wrong, as no one had reported a missing person or claimed the body. That is, until Sarasvati heard the news. A week had passed without any word from Devansh, and she began to worry. Suspecting that the body might be his, she came forward to the police and filed a report. This prompted investigators from Coimbatore city to join the case, and they started questioning several of Mr. Samarth's employees. The employees, however, refused to talk, afraid of the consequences. Meanwhile, Vedika grew suspicious of her father, noticing his uncharacteristic silence and the strange behavior of those around him. She began asking questions, but Mr. Samarth said nothing, torn between protecting his employees and facing the mounting pressure of a police investigation. By mid-October 2018, the weight of it all became too much for Mr. Samarth. He decided to turn himself in, walking into the authorities and confessing everything. He admitted to orchestrating Devansh's demise after learning about the man's deceitful history, his lies, manipulations, and the way he had taken advantage of Vedika's love and trust. Samarth expressed deep regret, not just for what he had done but for the pain it had brought his family. He couldn't believe that his well-educated, intelligent daughter had been so thoroughly deceived by a man she met through a dating app. The grand reception they had thrown for Devansh now felt like a cruel joke. It wasn't just Vedika who had been fooled, it was the entire family, and Samarth's actions were born from a father's desperation to right the wrongs. At his trial in the Palakkad District High Court in February 2019, Mr. Samarth testified that his original intention was simply to scare and discipline Devansh that night, to teach him a lesson. However, when Devansh resisted, things spiraled out of control. A fight broke out between Devansh and Samarth's employees, ultimately leading to the young man's death. Panicked and unsure of what to do, they decided to dispose of his body by pushing it into the nearby river. Samarth explained that he hadn't wanted to involve his employees but feared that Devansh might resist or try to escape during the confrontation, so he brought them along as backup. Adding to the courtroom drama was the presence of Ahana, Devansh's first wife. She described him as a lazy, manipulative man who spent his time drinking, chasing women, and living off others. Ahana testified that Devansh had abandoned her without warning, taking her money and cell phone when he left. She expressed shock upon learning that Devansh had remarried with the blessing of his parents, especially since they were fully aware of his existing marriage. However, during police questioning, Devansh's parents claimed they had been told he was divorced from Ahana. Throughout the trial, Samarth's lawyer shed light on Devansh's shady past. He had not only deceived numerous women with sweet words but had also been arrested for serious crimes. These included draining the bank account of a former girlfriend, using stolen credit cards for online shopping, and fraudulently applying for loans using a client's identity. Although he was briefly detained for these offenses, a woman with ties to Devansh paid his bail, allowing him to be released in Coimbatore city. However, this woman refused to testify in court, likely to protect her family's reputation. By mid-March 2019, the Coimbatore City Jury and Court reached a verdict. Mr. Samarth was found guilty of assault resulting in Devansh's death, but was deemed to have acted partially in self-defense. He was sentenced to a maximum of 15 years in prison. The employees who were present during the incident were not sentenced, as they were found to have acted under Samarth's orders. As for Sarasvati, she received a 2-month prison sentence for engaging in inappropriate behavior with Devansh, marking the end of a saga that left lives shattered and reputations tarnished. What lessons can we learn from this story?